Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Spooky AF. My name is Rob, and today I'm joined by my co-host Suz. Suz, how are you doing?
Hi everybody. Oh, I'm here. I'm not ready for the week, like the work week to begin, but other than that, I'm doing all right.
More than fair. Yeah, I'm kind of on the same sort of bandwidth as you. I'm kind of had a good weekend, but we're recording on a Sunday for anyone listening, so we're at that point now where I think everyone's minds are starting to drift to Monday on what's coming. So
got the Sunday scaries.
The Sunday scaries. That's exactly it. But yeah, I hope everyone is doing well. I actually have a very brief update for you, Suz. As you know,
okay.
I was in France last week at the time of recording.
Yep.
And I was in Strasbourg for a few days after going to Paris. My first time in Paris. Paris was lovely, by the way.
It was your first time in Paris?
My first time in Paris, yeah.
Wow.
I'm an uncultured swine. Yeah, so got all my culture in Paris and then went to Strasbourg for a few days. But anyone who follows us on Instagram would have seen the post I made that someone in Strasbourg was just putting up frequent graffiti around the place, just saying aliens exist. So I was very happy to see that. So I did make a post about it on Instagram for anyone that did see it. Naturally with the X-Files theme playing in the background as well.
Oh, I mean, because you have to.
Yeah, there's nothing else that you would play with that. But I thoroughly enjoyed even getting to Strasbourg and still seeing some spooky things present everywhere.
We can't get away from that. Everywhere is the paranormal playground.
This is it. Exactly. So it was a fun time, and the aliens exist graffiti was just the cherry on top of a lovely trip. But it was literally everywhere. I don't know why this person chose to do this in Strasbourg, but for some reason that was the place, and it was the same like green graffiti can everywhere as well. So,
oh yeah, amazing.
Appreciate it, whoever it was out there. If you ever listen to this episode, I loved it. I appreciated it. Thank you for that. It was actually my wife who saw it initially, and she was like, "You need to take a picture of that and put it on Instagram."
She supports the pod.
Oh, she was like, "You need to take that picture." So no, it was good. But yeah, that's my brief little update on the further paranormal world that exists outside of our offices.
I have a brief pop culture update. I would
yes, please.
I would like to share with you and get your feedback because I am internally screaming.
Okay.
So as you know, the Dune Part 2 is coming out soon, which I'm like fucking delighted about because I love that book.
Yep.
My mom used to read it to me. It's one of my favorites. So that's great. Very excited about that. But I then found out the date and it's really close to my birthday of the release for Beetlejuice 2.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Which the title is Beetlejuice. Yeah.
Flawless title.
Flawless title. I know nothing about it. I am like, it could be like, so Beetlejuice is my favorite film. For the audience that doesn't know, it could be terrible. Like it could be horrendous. However, like I am so excited for it to maybe not be.
Yep. More than fair.
Like I'm 100% gonna go see it in the cinema for once, and like I'm so excited about it.
It's gonna be great.
It's gonna be great.
I think it's one of those films that I think you need to go into it planning to be disappointed.
Yes. Well, because like
it'll only get
how do you perfect, like how do you move, like how do you do something better than the original?
Yeah. Like, it's original cast as well, isn't it? Like, it's so...
Yes, it's almost all the original cast. Plus, I think Jenna Ortega is in it, which, brilliant. I mean, makes sense after her turn as Wednesday Addams, but...
She was brilliant, by the way. She's...
Oh, yeah.
No, that's... I didn't actually realize it was that soon. It was coming out, so no, that's great.
Yeah, I think so. It's coming out in June sometime. And then the other thing I'm very excited about was that, like, so... Obviously, the Super Bowl was, like, recently, and I... couldn't care less. I didn't know who was playing. Didn't care. And the delightful thing is now that I don't live in the United States, I didn't have to hear about it. Yep. But the thing I am interested in is that they premiered the trailer for the Wicked movie, like the musical.
Oh, did they? I didn't realize that.
They did. You will absolutely have to go watch the teaser trailer. It's got Ariana Grande starring as Glinda the Good Witch.
Jesus. Okay.
I know. But, like, they've clearly poured a lot of money into it. And, like, watching it, all I could do was, like, internally scream and cry like a 14-year-old.
Fair. More than fair.
I was just like, oh my god, defying gravity. Like, my husband was like, that was a minute-long trailer and you are, like, visibly, like, shaken.
Yep. more than fair.
So yeah, so I highly recommend that. That's my little like pop culture window of Suz's interests.
Yep.
Like you should go watch. Oh, no, last thing. Are you watching? I don't know if we've talked about this. We may have talked about this. Are you watching True Detective?
No, I haven't, because I have a reason. Because True Detective is one of those shows that I need to watch every episode in a go. I can't deal with the stress of waiting for new episodes to come out.
Oh, and it is stressful.
Yeah, I know. Every other season has been so far, so I've made the decision this time to wait. And,
we're watching it as it goes, and so like this, for those of you who don't know, this new season is called True Detective Night Country, and takes place in like northern Alaska, where they're like 3 days in. It starts when they're 3 days into sort of the season of All Day Night.
Yep.
And it's got Jodie Foster in it, who is
Brilliant.
like, Jesus Christ, brilliant. Like that woman.
Yeah.
She's incredible. Also, she's like 61.
Fuck off.
Her body is insane. Oh yeah. Like, oh my God, like insane. Oh yeah. We actually stopped at one point. We're like, the audacity of that woman to look that good at that age.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think it's brilliant so far. It's really complex, like very much in the line of the other True Detective seasons that are good. So basically all of them except for 2.
Yeah, 2 was painful to watch. I was concerned when 2 came out that it was going to be the end of True Detective, but I'm glad they pushed on through.
Oh yeah. No, I had seen 1 roughly when it came out, and then it wasn't until this past, like my husband and I started kind of rewatching them over the summer.
Yeah.
And we restarted with 1 because we hadn't seen 1 in ages, and we were like, oh God, that was brilliant. And then we watched 2 because neither one of us had seen 2, and we were like, that was horrendous. Even though it had like I love Rachel McAdams.
Yep.
And like Colin Farrell's a good actor as well. But I was just like, the writing on this is terrible.
I think that's it with that show, is that it wasn't actually like, there wasn't anything bad about it apart from the writing. So
yeah.
Unfortunately.
Oh yeah.
One final thing, you mentioned Dune.
Oh yeah.
Have you seen the Popcorn Bucket?
Oh, I've seen it because you sent it to me.
Oh, did I? Okay.
Yeah. You were like, I've seen this, now you two have to see it too, Suz.
Yeah.
I was like, oh God.
Yeah. That's
I'm not gonna lie, I kind of want one just
I know.
just to have.
I know. You are, when I think of, like, I just associate you with Dune. Like, that's in my head.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, that's a Suz thing.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's one of my favorite novels. But like, I think that like, so basically, listeners, if any of you don't know what we're talking about, Google like Dune 2 Popcorn Bucket, and you will be treated to
Horror.
You'll be treated to like some. I have to imagine somebody got yelled at for that.
Or they were got applauded for it because of the meme that it's become.
True.
Yeah.
Very true.
So we'll never know, though, and that's okay.
No, we'll never know. It wasn't either of us.
No.
So.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'm glad we both had some good updates and some good little pop culture updates as well before we get into this case.
Yeah.
This case I'm very excited for. It's a famous enough case, to be fair, but it's one that I've been it's been sitting in the back of my mind for a while that I wanted to cover it. So it's a classic spooky story as well. So, you know.
See, when you messaged that to me, because we tried, like, all right, listeners, we try not to like reveal what we're doing to each other before we start recording, just to keep up the like potential surprise factor. Yep. And yeah, so all you said were like you were excited. It was a classic spooky story, and I was like, oh God, like that is good, because we've kind of been doing some like weird and wacky ones, so
yes.
it'll be good to get back to our roots.
Yeah, we do try to keep the surprise with each other. There is inevitably going to come a point one week when we sit down to record where both of us will have decided on the same episode.
Oh God. Well, that will actually just be hilarious.
That would be hilarious. That might ultimately end up just being a special episode where we acknowledge it's finally happened.
Yes, we just do one mega episode where both of us like talk about it.
So that might be.
Oh, it could be a 2-parter, like, and that'll be the 2 episodes. Yeah, it'll work.
So it is inevitably going to happen someday. It could take a year. It could take 6 years. It could be next week.
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll wait and see for when that happens. But thankfully, no. Today I know for a fact that this is not the case, because we've already recorded your episode, Suz. So.
Oh God, yeah, and that was wild.
So my episode today takes place in England in the late 1960s and the early 1970s in a town called Pontefract.
Okay.
Have you heard of the town of Pontefract?
I have heard of the town of Pontefract.
Excellent.
I think I am very vaguely familiar with this case, but
Excellent.
I will leave it to you.
So the case today that I am talking about is the Black Monk of Pontefract. This is a name given to a poltergeist that allegedly haunted a house, number 30 East Drive in Pontefract, England, in the late 1960s and the early 1970s. Have you heard of this case, Suze?
I don't think I've actually heard of the case. Like I've heard of the name Pontefract before, but honestly, when you said the time period, I was a little concerned, not concerned, but I was just like, oh my god, I was trying to remember when Enfield happened, and I was like, oh my god, is he breaking out Enfield haunting? Oh my god.
No. Enfield haunting, that will be a text to you saying, by the way, I'm thinking about covering Enfield.
And we'll have a conversation about it.
Yeah, Enfield is definitely a much bigger story.
Yeah.
So no. Enfield will be a much later in the run of this podcast episode, I think.
Oh, absolutely. No, so yes, I have heard of Pontefract. I have not heard of the Black Monk.
Excellent. That's good to know. So the Black Monk of Pontefract, as I said, was a poltergeist, allegedly haunted this house in the late 60s, early 70s. And as all things with poltergeists go, there are some, distressing stories and things like that. I won't be focusing in on them. I'm just going to glance over them. I'll mention them, but that's not what this podcast is about. I'll just glance over certain things.
And we get to do that because it's our podcast.
Exactly. And so yeah, I'm conscious of that, so I will glance over it. What do you know about poltergeists, Suze, actually, before we start? Do you know much about them?
Yeah, yes and no. I guess I might have what one might say is a general knowledge of poltergeists for someone who's interested in horror and the supernatural. Yeah. So from my a quick view of what I think of as a poltergeist. So my first introduction to poltergeist was the film Poltergeist.
Classic. Great entrance into the world of poltergeist.
Oh yeah, and I saw that film way too young.
I think most people have, to be fair. Most people of a certain generation saw that way too young, myself included. It leaves a mark.
And and so you think of to me, poltergeists are the kind of, unlike ghosts, like the white, like a gray lady or something, like poltergeists are like that scene in Poltergeist when she turns around and then all the chairs are stacked up on the table and shit, and plates are flying around the room and all that, and then you've also got Peeves in Harry Potter, who is mainly known for being mischievous and throwing shit. So I think of things being thrown around and vaguely threatening.
Well, you've pretty much knocked it on the head. That's effectively what a poltergeist is. Very, very glad that you use the term mischievous as well, because that is what they are mostly known for. So, for anyone that doesn't know, poltergeist is a German word. They come from German folklore, and the meaning, or the word poltergeist, it means rumbling ghost or noisy spirit.
On the nose, as German often tends to be.
Exactly. You gotta love the Germans for that. They're very just direct.
Yes.
And as it's a type of ghost or a spirit, and it's responsible for physical disturbances such as loud noises, objects being moved or destroyed. We've already covered it with plates, chairs being stacked, all that sort of thing. And basically just being kind of initially a mischievous sort of spirit. And then it kind of moves on then. There's kind of this classification for hauntings that I've seen online, and it's there's different stages of poltergeist hauntings. So it'll initially start with noises or scratching and things like that, and then it moves to things being moved, and then it kind of progresses further then to physical interactions with people. So it kind of comes out in pinching or biting or hitting or scratching or something like that, or tripping people up, and then it can progress further then to actually making hearing a voice and things. So
does this kind of, can I ask a question, does this kind of overlap with because I know very commonly when you hear certain accounts of being in a house that's supposed to be possessed or something, people getting those suddenly having 3 long scratches down their back or something. Would that be kind of a phase of poltergeist activity?
Yeah, so poltergeists are generally associated with that there's that kind of escalation of hauntings, that it does get to an eventual point where they'll attack people.
So are they demons?
No, so they are ghosts. that's they are they're inherently a ghost from what I
Okay.
understand. And
cool.
yeah, so there's that various things, and then there's all sorts of stories about poltergeists that we all know, and the various things that they can do. They can levitate objects, furniture, cutlery. There's also things that are associated with poltergeists as well, are also like bad smells or like noises, like knocking on doors, or like, as I said, like horrific smells in rooms and things like that.
Okay.
So there's like multiple signs that poltergeists are about and doing things. And then
They're really an attack on the senses.
Yeah, exactly. And then in a more kind of like modern side of poltergeists that's kind of come out more in the 20th century is that they also interfere with like electrical objects. Lights will flicker. Or in the case of alleged poltergeist in Wales in the 80s, there was like this family's like electricity bills were like really, really high, and they couldn't understand why. And basically it was like they were putting it down to like a poltergeist activity. But like when I say their electricity bills were high, their electricity bills were like thousands of pounds a month. It was like the equivalent of like,
oh my God.
Like it was the equivalent of like multiple houses worth of energy being used, sort of thing. So poltergeist.
That's just. Yeah. I have so many like that. Okay, number one, like how pissed off would you be? Like,
for sure.
Holy shit! Like I would grab a poltergeist by its metaphysical neck and ring it.
Oh yeah.
But then, like, of course, when you said electricity bill, the first thing I thought was, well, if they only knew about the Alaskan Triangle.
Yeah, exactly. Poltergeists they can do whatever they want with electricity then if they knew about the Alaskan Triangle.
Exactly.
For anyone who doesn't know what we're known about, go listen to that episode. And then I suppose the more kind of sinister thing about poltergeists then, obviously apart from the punching and biting and hitting and all that sort of thing, is that there's a collective agreement as well that poltergeists are generally drawn to older children / early teenage years victims, I suppose, is the way to describe them. So children who are between the age of like 11 or 12 up to 18, 19 years of age, basically.
Well, that lines up with like a lot of horror films, including Poltergeist.
It does, yeah. So there's multiple theories around that, and I won't get into all of them today, but basically it's like the accepted theory, if you're believing in poltergeists, is that people who are of that age, they're generally a little bit more kind of like fragile mentally because they're going through like puberty and things like that, and everything's changing for them. So they're already feeling out of sorts. They're not really they're just a bit more vulnerable, I suppose, mentally. And they're basically like a target for poltergeist then as a result, because they're easier effectively to target. So
yeah, because they're on like a theoretical like threshold of their lives, and so like I guess that can be kind of used as a metaphor for being like on the threshold between like being in the world and not being in the world, which is kind of where poltergeists operate. So
it's an interesting idea, and it's unfortunately relevant to today's case as well, that kind of focus on younger people.
Okay.
And then just finally then on kind of like, as I was getting into like the history of poltergeists and things like that, there's been recorded occurrences of poltergeists in like multiple cultures and countries. Mm-hmm. So there's basically recorded stories, like multiple recorded stories from like Australia, there's from Brazil, obviously the US, Japan, China, Korea, Vietnam, most of Southeast Asia actually, pretty much the majority of like European nations as well. And allegedly the first recorded case of a poltergeist actually dates back to the 1st century. So these lads have been around for quite a while, just getting up to all sorts of shenanigans. So they're very much so around. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on the history of them, and they're kind of the classic, I suppose, signs of poltergeist activity before we get into this.
That's quite a history.
Yeah, they're an interesting spooky entity, and they're for me, I don't know why I find the idea of a poltergeist actually like obviously terrifying, but also like I find them quite sad. I don't know why. I think it's just because they target like younger people, and younger people are more vulnerable and things like that, and it's just sad, especially with some of the stories. Yeah. But yes, we're done now. Summarising poltergeists. As I said, today's case is on the Black Monk of Pontefract. And yeah, this happened, as I said, in the late 60s, early 70s in England, and specifically in a house, number 30 East Drive. And at the time, the house was occupied by the Pritchard family, and it consisted of Joe and Jean, their son Philip, and their daughter Diane. And according to their accounts, some kind of activity started happening in their house sometime in the late 60s. and it kind of manifested as various phenomena. So it initially started off, and this is basically a checklist for poltergeist activity, as I said. Knocking sounds, scratching, just bumps in the night, I suppose is the best way to describe it. Thumps and things like that.
Yep.
Objects then started moving about the house. Plates started getting smashed. Things like that started happening.
It's always the plates. They're very against like cutlery.
They're not a fan of cutlery. And you know, look, I respect it. You know, they really just don't like it, and they're sticking to it.
Are all poltergeists like partaking in like what is it in Greek culture where you smash the plates?
Yes, basically that must be it. I'm assuming that's where it comes from. They're all ancient Greek ghosts.
That's a bold theory we're putting out there.
Yeah. And this has been my TED Talk.
Yeah, exactly.
Flying objects, puddles of water appearing in the house as well, out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. Foul smells, the classic cold spots.
Ooh.
And then electrical malfunctions.
Right.
So really just a checklist. If you had a bingo card, basically, of all things poltergeist activity, someone definitely would have got bingo there with everything.
Oh, yeah.
So that's kind of how it all initially started. And then the poltergeist then also reportedly escalated things, and there were stories of family members being attacked. And unfortunately, as I said earlier, kids are a focus, and their daughter, Diane, was kind of the focal point, or the focus, I suppose, for a lot of these things. And I will get into that at some point.
Okay.
Touching on it briefly. So, yeah, as I said, this kind of spirit started interactions started happening in the house. The family kind of just, I think initially they didn't really know how to deal with this sort of thing, as most families, I assume, would. Kind of were a bit uncertain about it. And I think they kind of, in a classic British manner, kind of just put up with it and lived with it for a while.
Stiff upper lip, like.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And just kind of just went on with it. At some point, though, these things, they went too far, and the poltergeist allegedly started attacking the family members, like pushing them, shoving them, scratching them. Mm-hmm. And it kind of culminated then in Diane, the daughter, being dragged up the stairs by an invisible force. So being dragged backwards up a stairs, and the attack basically left her with visible marks on her neck afterwards.
I mean, that would be like, if that were in a horror film, that would be one of like the climaxes of the film, would be like a young girl like being by like how terrifying it would be to watch someone be dragged up the stairs by something you can't see.
Oh yeah 100%. So yeah, that's kind of when things started, like they started then panicking, like, okay, shit, there's like a genuine, like, something's going on here.
Yeah.
So other things that happened in the house after this then, or sorry, just prior to this, was apparently a white mist started forming in the living room.
Huh.
Which started like taking various shapes and then just disappeared.
Ooh.
And then on another occasion, then the family returned home to find that their house was filled with chalk dust.
What?
And that the dust had basically covered the furniture, all of the walls, but also inside locked cabinets.
Oh no. Oh, okay. I am both confused and terrified. Yeah. Oh.
The poltergeist then, as I said, would move and throw objects around the house, such as cutlery and plates, ornaments, toys, clothes. And another thing, a key thing of poltergeist activity, is some objects would just disappear. So things would just go missing and then would reappear at a different time, basically, like much later, like days later, weeks later, in different places or outside the house. So this kind of, it was just this escalating kind of series of events that just kept occurring. And something that you touched on earlier when you said that you know that they're kind of mischievous. This is another thing that poltergeists are known for. So poltergeists, there's this kind of accepted thing that poltergeists seem to have this sense of humor about them, or kind of this mischievous side to them. And this specific ghost would often prank the family. So it would like ring the doorbell repeatedly, or the toilet would just randomly start flushing on its own. The taps in the house would turn on their own. Doors would just start locking and unlocking. People would walk into a room and the door would lock behind them. That is terrifying. Or like car keys or house keys would go missing.
Okay.
So lots of activity going on. Like this shit was just like unrelentless, effectively. So after what happened with Diane, with her being kind of the focus point of this, what I mentioned being dragged, the Pritchards started doing some sort of research into this. They were looking into it, and they at some point came up with the kind of the theory that this was the spirit of a monk and that he lived in the area in the 16th century.
Okay.
And that this specific monk had been hanged for attacking and murdering a young girl.
Okay. This is specific.
Yeah, so I don't actually know where this theory came from.
That's what I'm like. It's quite a jump.
Yeah, so
at least to me.
So I don't know where this theory came from. I don't know where the family got it from, but
Yeah.
there is further background to this, I suppose, that they could have potentially found out in maybe like a local library or something like that. But to the background, I suppose, of that theory is that in the area there was an order of Cluniac monks. Maybe I'm not saying it right. But they were known as the Cluniac monks of Pontefract, and they were a branch of the Benedictine order. And basically, for anyone who doesn't know, the Benedictines follow a very strict rule in life. Like they're very kind of they're the classic monk, very strict, very following certain rules, and that's it. They don't kind of venture outside that. And these monks, this order, they established a priory in Pontefract in the 11th century and became one of the wealthiest areas. Things in the area, and it also, though, apparently became one of the most influential monasteries in England.
Okay.
So as these things go, naturally the church was starting to get more influence, more power, and were dictating public policy, rules, all that sort of stuff. This is heading
into I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just thinking, this is like when you said it's a Benedictine order, like it's a branch of them and all that. I was like, are we talking about the black tapes? I thought we agreed we weren't going to talk about that.
This is what this whole episode has been. It's like it's been an elaborate ruse. You found out my plan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And suddenly we're all blind with rage again.
Yeah, I would have gotten away with it too.
No, but I'm thinking Benedictines, it's kind of isn't it kind of hilarious that ended up being the wealthiest thing in the area? Because I'm thinking of in Umberto Eco's The Name of the Rose. Isn't it a Benedictine monastery where it's they're not allowed to laugh, they're not allowed to read comedy, they're not allowed to have basically any possessions. It's quite grim.
Yeah, so I think that's the Benedictines. They are very strict in certain things. I know there's the Jesuits as well, kind of take that vow of poverty, I think, don't they?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the Benedictines as well are quite strict in those sort of things as well, around owning property and things like that. But shockingly, they didn't follow those rules apparently.
What do you mean, Rob?
I know. So yeah, as I said, this became one of the most influential monasteries in England apparently, and was starting to cause problems for the royal family. Because
it was so wealthy?
Because it was so wealthy, and up until a certain point, the royal family were also still Catholic. So
right.
This was a Catholic order of monks that was effectively one of the most influential monasteries in the country, and they were ruling with whatever rules that they had. And at the top of it all, there was a Catholic royal family who effectively were being dictated to, I suppose, or there was potential that they were being dictated to by this order. And we're still obviously answerable to the Pope and things like that. So for anyone that knows English history, that changes at a certain point. So this specific priory was dissolved by Henry VIII in 1539 as part of the dissolution of the monasteries. And not only did he close down the monastery and kind of, end its life there, he also decided that most of the monks were also going to be executed.
Oh, God. All right.
So they were executed or exiled, and most of their lands and buildings were also seized or confiscated by the crown and then sold to private owners or taken under the ownership of the crown.
Right.
So, they went from being the big lads on top to all of a sudden most of them were killed or exiled and all of their lands taken. So one of these specific monks, and naturally we don't have any names for any of these monks, one of the monks who apparently had met this kind of, I suppose, tragic end was allegedly the Black Monk of Pontefract. As I said, he was accused of attacking and then killing a young girl near the priory.
And this is when he was alive,
yes,
right?
Yeah. So I believe this happened after the priory was closed down. That's where I kind of think that this happened. And he was captured, brought to justice, and was arrested. And then ultimately he was hanged at a nearby hill, which was later known as Gallows Hill.
Oh, classic.
Yes, just very much so on the head. And then rather than being buried, his body was thrown into a well.
Oh, okay. I mean,
Apparently then the girl's parents, in a fit of rage, then cursed the well and basically said that the monk is to remain there forever. He doesn't get to have a burial. And yeah, they put a curse on it.
Okay.
So somewhere along the line, the Pritchard family found out about this story.
Yeah.
And they effectively came to the conclusion that the monk's spirit basically remained restless and angry, and that he was seeking revenge on the living by haunting the house at 30 East Drive. And that, yeah, he basically was getting up to all shenanigans, basically, as a means of haunting the living.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know where this theory came from them. I don't know where they discovered it or how they discovered it, but they discovered it nonetheless. And they decided it was a monk. And then obviously the story about the monk attacking and killing a girl, when they then discovered that Diane, the daughter, was the focus of things, it all made sense to them. So this was the monk, basically.
Okay, so sorry, can I clarify something? Is so the house that they're living in, the Pritchard family, is that on like the grounds of where the abbey was, or the monastery, or no? Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
It's in the area.
Okay, sorry.
And I did see some things online that I didn't include, that allegedly the like Gallows Hill, where he was hung, allegedly it's across the road from where the house now is, but I literally saw it mentioned once online and nowhere else. So
yeah.
I don't know if it is.
Okay, it just seems like okay, this is gonna sound like clearly I have my own framework for how this stuff should work, but I think that like them claiming it's like this black monk from the area and like it's so far in the past, it almost seems like, I don't know, it would make more sense if they had like it would have made more sense to me if they discovered like, oh, someone was murdered in the house we're living in like 50 years ago.
Yep. No,
and like
100%.
that's what's haunting us rather than
So yeah, I don't know. Basically, I'm assuming how all these things work. It probably is close by, or it's like very much so.
Like, who are we to say? Who are we to make the rules here?
Yeah, absolutely. Like we don't know where this guy like died. We're not sure. Like he could have potentially been, he could have been arrested where the house now is, or something like that, and that's where his spirit is returning there, or something like that. Or,
yeah.
So for the sake of the story, we'll say yes. So yeah, we don't know, basically, but I'm gonna say for the sake of the story, yeah, we'll say that the monastery was right there, and where he was hung was directly across the road as well, and the well was probably there as well. yeah. In this like paranormal triangle.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we're willing to like bend some rules we thought we had.
Exactly. So so the Pritchards, as I said, they decided on this and accepted that this was who it was. And when they heard about the girl being attacked and killed, that then when their daughter Diane was dragged up the stairs, they were like, this is who it is. It has to be this person. And then at some point afterwards, then once they kind of decided on it being a black monk, the poltergeist then started to take on a physical form, and they claimed that they saw a hooded figure in a black robe wandering around the house. And allegedly it wasn't just seen in the house, it was also seen around the neighborhood, and this further proved their point that this was the black monk. That they I think once they saw the hooded figure and it was like black, like dark, that's where they coined the term black monk. But that basically like it validated everything that they knew. And then on top of this, then they claimed that they also found a locket in the house, and a psychic medium apparently who came in told them that the locket belonged to the murdered girl, and that the monk left it there for them in the house. Okay,
this is almost ticking too many boxes to be believable. Like if I were to like if I were to like judge the story on like, do I think it could, like, if I were to believe in the paranormal existing, like, could it be possible? It's almost like, if it were a horror film, it's doing too much.
Exactly. So, so naturally, as all these things go, the media heard about it, and the media in the UK in the 60s and 70s loved a good ghost story. They were mad for them. They in the 50s and 60s in the UK, there was the Battersea Poltergeist was like really famous.
Oh god, yeah.
That was all over the papers. So then when this came along in the late 60s, early 70s, it was just, I think enough time had passed that all of a sudden then another big story kind of ended up in the papers. So the Daily Mirror apparently turned up. One of their reporters was there and did a story on it. And then naturally, once the public starts hearing about it and the media starts reporting on it, psychic investigators then started turning up as well.
Oh, God.
So one particular psychic investigator, Tom Cunliffe, I think is his name, he turned up and allegedly claimed that there was a lot of activity there and that they were correct in that it was the monk and all.
Yep.
And then ultimately, this culminated in a book being written by the Daily Mirror reporter, Colin Wilson, and there was also a film that came out of it as well by Pat Holden, I think is the name of the director.
There's a film?
Yeah, apparently, yeah. I don't know if it's any good, but there is a film. So yeah, all of this activity started happening, and yeah, things just started escalating. So as I was saying, there was the chalk dust, the plates, the cutlery, the pranks. But then at a certain point then, the poltergeist apparently started showing signs of intelligence and awareness, and it started to respond to the family's questions or requests. And so they would ask it a question, and then it would knock on the walls or on the furniture in some sort of response to them. But then they also claimed that it started to seem to like know the names of the family members. So they would say like, oh, go find Diane, or like, where's Diane? And then they would like knock near her.
Oh.
And then it apparently then also started to like track the habits of the family members and their friends. So like, I don't know what that means. I saw it mentioned a few times online. I'm assuming it was just like, I don't know, because it's the 60s, I'm assuming everyone smoked in the house. So like maybe it was like hiding cigarettes or something like that. Or I don't know. I'm not 100% certain. But I did see it mentioned a few times. So I thought it was worthy of mentioning.
It might have been really like weird and banal. Like I'm just thinking like, oh yeah, well like what is it? What's the guy's name? Like John or whatever. Like takes a morning dump at 8:30.
Exactly.
Like knock on the bathroom door.
Wakes up John at like 7:59, being like, "Man, you gotta get ready for your shit." Like,
yeah, like your bowels are moving.
Yeah. Unfortunately, as I said, as these things go with poltergeists, things started to escalate, and it started to display a more violent and malicious side to it, and would start to harm the family and their visitors. So it would start to like slap or scratch certain visitors, or some people claim that they were getting bitten by it. It would pull them, so they could be doing something standing in the kitchen, and then they get pulled, or they get pushed over.
Okay.
And some of these attacks were so physical and so heavy that it actually left visible marks or bruises on multiple people.
Jesus.
And yeah, it just, as I said, it just kept escalating and escalating. And it got to a point where, as I said, the daughter Diane seemed to be kind of the focus point after a while then. So she claimed that she saw the Black Monk quite frequently, and she was terrified of him. She described him as a tall, dark figure with a hooded robe and no face.
Ooh.
And the poltergeist, at this point then, once it started like taking on a physical form, it seemed to have a hatred for religious symbols or items. So any crosses that were in the house, or Bibles, rosaries, holy water, it would destroy them or defile them in some way. Or it would apparently start like pouring holy water around, and they assumed it was like he was like mocking them, basically being like, this is no power against me, basically. It got to a point then where the family called in a priest, and it seemed to be afraid of the priest initially. Like it kind of backed away. It didn't cause any issues. The priest apparently blessed the house, tried to exorcise the spirit, but nothing happened. The spirit remained, and this only seemed to anger the spirit more, because after this, it took out its anger basically on Diane. So as I said, it then pulled her up the stairs backwards, leaving marks on her neck, and then it then culminated in it tried to strangle Diane with an electrical wire.
Oh God.
So apparently she allegedly had an electrical wire pulled around her neck, and it tried to strangle her. And then at some point then it also set fire to her bed.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So
that's wild.
The family at this point, naturally completely terrified, they moved out of the house in the late 1970s.
That took them way longer than it
basically
would have taken
10
me.
years.
Oh yeah, that's way too long.
So they lived with this for 10 years, and at this point they said enough is enough, we need to leave. And as these things go, naturally the poltergeist activity seems to have stopped once they left, or subsided anyway.
Okay.
Not stopped entirely, but definitely subsided. And that kind of ended the story there for that part of it. So the house then kind of became this like popular destination for ghost hunters and tourists who would go there trying to like capture like paranormal phenomena. it's all kind of culminated now in the current owner of the house has actually turned it into a museum and a guest house for people who want to spend a night in the house.
Naturally.
But naturally, you also have to pay for this.
Oh, of course you do.
Yeah, so it's like, I had a quick look at it online beforehand. It's 85 quid a night to stay in the house.
Oh, that's not bad.
No, it's not too bad.
Like, in terms of how much a hotel, like, in like, London or Dublin costs.
Yeah.
Like...
So, yeah, so that's, it's now turned into this museum, ghost hunter kind of area where people go spend the night, do investigations, try to capture images of the ghost as they've seen it. So, Suz, would you like to see some alleged evidence of the ghost?
Oh, you know that I would.
So I am going to send you some pictures and you can let me know what you think. So, first picture I've sent to you.
Yep.
That is allegedly the hand of the monk being caught from around a corner, and people agree that it's either holding rosary beads or it's holding something else in its hand.
I'm gonna row them back to the boathouse and say that that's not a hand.
Yeah.
So like whatever it's holding is irrelevant because that's not a hand.
Fair. That's more than fair.
It looks like, I mean, I'm fulfilling my role as as Scully here, but like, I mean, it looks like smoke.
It does.
Like thick smoke, to be fair. But yeah, I remain unconvinced that is something that is a hand, like an embodied spirit.
No, absolutely. Here's another one, which you can let me know what you think.
Wait, what am I looking at? Rob, what have you sent me?
So, allegedly, that picture is someone has taken a picture looking into the hallway, and there's a mirror at the end of the stairs. And someone said that they took a picture, and when they looked at the photo afterwards, they saw the image of the Black Monk basically sitting on the stairs, but it's being reflected through the mirror.
So that's why so dear listeners, the mirror that we're seeing is like kind of 2/3 of the way kind of blackened, and it looks like there could be, like, if you look at it hard enough, there's kind of like a face in it. Like I can see the argument there. It's a weird photo.
It's strange. It's a bit unsettling to look at, but I do agree with you. I think it's that kind of pareidolia, sort of finding faces where they don't exactly exist.
Apophenia
as well.
Yeah. No, I can, like, having like been talking about this and being prepped for what I was about to see, like, I am, like, I do see a figure in the mirror, but
sure. And then finally, this is my favorite one. This one allegedly shows, well, I don't need to tell you what it is. You see it.
Oh, okay. All right.
So this allegedly is a full-bodied picture of the Black Monk.
Right.
A shadow picture, effectively.
If anything, like, I can see where people, like, I can see, like, the outline of a figure. I get that could be seen. It looks like it could be, like, nude.
Yeah, just a little freak.
It's a bit unsettling.
House, like,
like, it doesn't look like a hooded figure. It looks like the silhouette of a nude body. Yeah, I would be, if I saw that in real life, I would be taken aback for sure. I can't, I will say, like, I can't offer you a explanation for what it is if, like, in a non-paranormal way. I can't tell you.
Absolutely not. It's a bit strange. Yeah, it's basically a shadow person standing in a doorway.
Yeah.
I'll put these all on Instagram when the episode goes up so people can see them and let us know what they think. But yeah, that's the pictures. There's a few other pictures that I found online. Nothing as kind of clear, I suppose.
Compelling.
Yeah, but yeah, they're kind of the main ones. So it's it's pure commercialized now. Like it's a place that you can go, you can sit in, you can stay the night and pay money basically to stay there and do your own investigations.
I mean, don't get me wrong, like, that sounds like a fun, like, city break.
Yeah. Oh no, that definitely. But yeah, so the Black Monk has basically, like, gone down in history. It's effectively considered one of the most violent and terrifying poltergeist cases in the UK. Some people have even taken to comparing it to the Enfield poltergeist, and some have also compared it to the Amityville horror.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so, all right. I have questions and a theory.
Amazing.
Okay. Question. I remain unconvinced the leap it took to, like, connect this case of, like, the monk who was hanged with the haunting in this house.
Yeah.
I remain unconvinced by the logical conclusion that was drawn.
Yeah, I To be honest with you, I don't know myself on that one. Like, because there's kind of this bit of uncertainty. I don't know if it's a case of they thought that they saw a figure or something like that, and they're like, oh, okay, that's kind of spooky. We'll go look into it. They looked into it and discovered this, and then when they saw the figure again, they were like, oh, that looks like a monk. Or
yeah. They backfilled their made the narrative fit.
Yeah, they retconned it basically.
Yes.
Yeah, I get the feeling that could be the case, but I don't know. It could be a case of they weren't sure about this at all, and then someone said it to them, and then they were like, "Oh, this has to be it." So
yeah. No, I mean that makes sense. Yeah, I also think like it is. I think one of the creepiest elements for me from the story was because it would be like it would be kind of a turn in a horror film, is if like when they came home and everything was covered in chalk dust, and like I don't know why, and they don't know why, and there's like marks, like handprints or whatever on locked things. Like that is in itself very creepy.
Yeah, so the chalk dust that one stood out to me as well, because from what I understand, it was all over the walls, all over the cabinets, on the inside of locked cabinets, over the doors, everything. And from what I understand, there wasn't a single handprint or anything anywhere.
Ooh, okay.
So like that to me, I find even kind of almost creepier.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one, I think that was actually kind of the standout one for me as well, where I was like, it's such a tame thing when you look at everything else that happens.
But it's so sinister.
Yeah.
I think, okay, and then I have, all right, so here's my like playing poltergeist advocate. But no, I think, could it be an issue of, or like a similar situation? I just think of like when young people are like come out with claims of the paranormal and things, like could there be an element of, and this goes all the way back to the Salem witch trials, like is there an element of like this is them expressing some other like difficult to process emotion, or like their place in society as being like shifting and potentially oppressed and repressed and all these things. So like you know, the Diane maybe clinging on to the experiences that are happening, and then like she saying she's seeing him, which I mean, like, who am I to say she didn't? But like, it being kind of, do you know what I'm getting at?
I completely agree with you, and I'm glad you brought that up actually, because the case I mentioned earlier, the Battersea Poltergeist, the source of that haunting was a teenage girl.
Yeah.
And she was the focal point for it as well. Others in the family did experience certain things, but she was the focus point of it. Fire was also an aspect to that as well, I will say. Diane then is a teenage girl. She's the focus point of this again. And then the Enfield haunting as well, for people who don't know. Again, teenage girls are the focus of the hauntings there. So
yeah, because I know there's arguments been made, like in particular, like just having like been interested in the occurrence of the Salem witch trials, like that there were elements of like in that particular case of, you know, it being an expression of like, this is how women could, like these young women were, because they were bored, or they were like limited in what they could do and what they could, and so like to have agency over their bodies or their experiences or what have you. Like there are all these like social reasons why they could potentially want to be attached to a narrative.
I agree with you completely, and I'm not saying it's just teenage girls that do this. It's lads are just.
Oh no!
It's unfortunately in these cases, teenage girls are the common denominator in it. But yes, I think there could be something more to it along those lines. But you know, so this is the other thing about the poltergeists that I was saying, is that poltergeists often target teenagers. That's kind of the accepted lore of poltergeists, and it is a case of they're targeting someone who's particularly like vulnerable mentally and things like that, but also you're also targeting teenagers who may feel the need to like act out and, you know, kind of express themselves, or maybe they're getting attention that they're craving. So, you know, there is a lot to be said for it as well. And the thing is with it as well, and I don't know where I read this, but I think there's a theory as well that with these certain things, the teenagers themselves are equally as terrified, because there's this kind of thing where they don't even realize themselves that they're doing it. There's this kind of theory that like they're almost like blacking out while they're doing something, and so they themselves have no memory of it as well, so they're equally as terrified by this haunting as others. So it's definitely something I think that needs to be considered. But you know, I think there is that, but I think the fact that other family members also claim to have seen apparitions, that's the one thing for me that kind of like makes it a bit more of a standout, that it's separate, that like,
Yeah.
because in the Battersea one, as for example, like I don't think any family members said that they saw any apparitions. It was all just activity was happening around them, whereas in this, family members are saying like, no, I've literally seen the dude fucking standing there. Like,
Yeah. Like it's like in Poltergeist when they're like, no, like she was sucked into the TV and we all saw
exactly.
it. Like,
so but it is something I think that people need to be conscious of. But I think for this one, it's a little bit more of a standout that there's like multiple people have seen this entity. So
yeah, it's a bit like, it reminds me, I don't know, like maybe just like the vibe of it was very much like The Haunting in Connecticut.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very similar. Yeah.
Like it as like it having a focal point of one member, but like all members kind of experiencing it, and there being these various like aspects to it. And I will continue to say, like, they committed, like, the housing market must have been horrendous if like 10 years in they're like, no, we gotta keep we can't leave.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, like this is, well, I suppose 1970s England, they're in like the middle of a horrific recession, so they're not going anywhere.
No, like they're like, well, this is just our lives now. Keep calm and carry on.
But that is the story of the Black Monk of Pontefract. It's a bit of a weird one. Like, it's kind of, lots happened. Yeah, Diane, unfortunately, was the focus of a lot of it and was, strangled with electrical wire, survived, and then her bed was set on fire, as I said. But seems...
Which in the 70s, like, I'm sure her bed was made of, like, pure
100%,
asbestos. And so, like, that would have, like, went up like a torch.
Yeah, naturally. And, this is 10 years later, so she's, at the very least, she's, like, her late teens, early 20s at this point. She's probably smoking, realistically. But yeah, it is an interesting case. But yeah, the family all did get out of it reasonably unscathed by the sound of things, and they all went on to live their lives effectively. So, well,
and it's interesting because like you hear conflicting, like I think we've even told conflicting stories in terms of like whether or not, like, because like I know we mentioned in a previous episode, like the whole like paradox or not paradox, but like the whole thing of a haunted house film is like, why don't you just leave the house?
Exactly.
But then there'd be some stories where like in Poltergeist where it's like it follows the family.
Yep, exactly.
Rather than just leaving the house. So
it's an interesting idea, but yeah, it seems to be stuck in this specific space, but interesting all the same. But yeah, as I said, that's it. We've covered the Black Monk of Pontefract. As I said, glanced over a few bits and pieces that were just not relevant to the story, but if anyone is interested in it, they should definitely look into it further and make up your own opinions. And do actually share your thoughts with us on social media. You can get in touch with us on Instagram. Let us know what you think, and you can also send us an email. I'd love to read a good email from a fan. Actually, you can send us an email at the spookyafpod@gmail.com, and yeah, you can let us know what you think there as well. I'd love to see some theories on this one from people, because it does seem pretty divisive online as well. Like if you go on Reddit, like you see people, it's kind of split down the middle
in terms of like people believing, like buying into it or saying it was I can see that. I'm probably on the side of it. Like, I'm typically, generally, like, always on the side of, like, it didn't happen. There's some kind of explainable reason behind it. But I do say, like, like I said, with those pictures, like, other than, like, Lynn's aberration, like, I can't really, I can't give you a reason.
And there's an abundance of pictures posted on Reddit of people going and visiting the house saying that they've seen something. So, do go check it out, anyone who's interested. But yeah, that concludes my summary, I suppose, of the Black Monk of Pontefract. Do reach out, let us know what you think.
It was an interesting story, and I think that it actually took a more like intimate family turn than because I kind of expected when you said like the Black Monk of Pontefract. I was like, okay, it's gonna be like a haunted abbey and like people will have encountered it first, but no, like the fact that it was like this one tormented family in like a small house.
Exactly. Yeah, it's very just like,
and all that. It was very different.
It's very kind of locked into one specific area.
Yeah, it's much more like Shirley Jackson haunting a Hill House.
Yes, exactly. It's very personal.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, that's it. I hope everyone enjoyed listening to this one. I hope everyone has a lovely weekend, and stay spooky, everyone.
Bye guys.